Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Discover Your Dreams. I'm Cynthia, and I'm so glad you're joining me today. This space is rooted in the grounded life philosophy, where inner peace becomes the foundation for purposeful living. Here, we focus on regulation, awareness, and conscious self-leadership as a way of returning to ourselves and meeting life from a grounded place. Before we get into the message for today, take one slow breath. Let it arrive without forcing anything. Just notice where you are for a moment. Notice your body, how it's sitting, how it's supported, how it feels to simply pause. Because the idea we're exploring today might nudge at something many of us have been taught our entire lives. We grow up hearing that if something really matters, we should try harder, work harder, push harder, focus harder. It's almost like effort becomes the proof that we care. But here's the strange part. Sometimes, the more we push, the more the outcome seems to drift away from us. And that can feel confusing, even discouraging, especially when we believe we're doing everything right. So today, we're slowing down and looking at why harder, at least in the way we've been conditioned to, can actually create more distance between you and what you want. Not to judge the effort, but to understand the pattern, and maybe to open a little space for a different way. Effort itself isn't the problem. There are plenty of things in life that genuinely do require effort. Learning something new, building something meaningful, showing up for the people and commitments that matter to you. Effort can be healthy, grounding, even energizing when it comes from a steady place. But effort starts to work against us when it's fueled by pressure. Pressure has a very specific tone to it. It whispers or sometimes shouts, "If this doesn't work, something is wrong." And when your nervous system hears that message, it doesn't interpret it as motivation. It interprets it as a threat. So it shifts into defense mode, trying to protect you rather than help you move forward. That's where things get tangled. Not because you're doing too much, but because the energy behind the doing has changed. When we start trying too hard, the body usually knows before the mind does. The shoulders lift, the breath gets a little tighter. There's this subtle bracing as if we're preparing for something to go wrong. The mind jumps right in behind it, scanning for anything that might confirm the tension. We start monitoring everything: our progress, other people's reactions, how quickly things are moving or not moving. And without meaning to, the thing we wanted begins to feel heavy, not because the goal itself is wrong or too big, but because somewhere along the way, our sense of safety got tied to achieving it. It stops being just a desire and starts becoming a condition for feeling okay. That's when the weight shows up. Underneath excessive effort, there's often an unspoken belief quietly running the show. I need this outcome in order to feel okay. It doesn't always sound that clear in our minds, but the body hears it. And the moment your sense of peace becomes tied to a specific outcome, the nervous system shifts gears. It moves into urgency, a kind of internal rush that says, this has to work, it has to happen now. Urgency narrows perception. It tightens our focus to the point where we can only see what feels threatening or missing. And when our perception narrows, it becomes harder to notice opportunities, timing, and alignment. The very things that help life unfold more smoothly. Not because we're incapable, but because urgency pulls us out of the wider view where clarity lives. There was a time in my life when I genuinely believed that if something was truly important, the only responsible thing to do was to give it everything I had. So I did. I worked constantly, thought about it constantly, planned constantly. My mind was always running, always strategizing, always trying to stay one step ahead. And for a while, it looked productive from the outside. There were checklists, progress, movement. It felt like I was doing all the right things. But underneath that productivity, there was tension, a kind of quiet strain that never really let up. Every step forward carried this subtle, persistent question: is this enough yet? And strangely, the harder I pushed, the more distant the results seemed to feel. Not because the opportunity vanished, or because I wasn't capable, but because my nervous system had slipped into pressure mode. And pressure changes everything. It distorts perception, making it harder to see clearly, harder to trust timing, harder to feel grounded in the process. The effort wasn't the issue. The pressure behind it was. What eventually shifted things for me wasn't a new strategy or a clever technique. It wasn't a different plan, a new routine, or a more efficient system. What changed everything was releasing the urgency. Letting go of that internal pressure that insisted the outcome had to happen a certain way, on a certain timeline, in order for me to feel okay. I stopped treating the result as a measure of my safety or worth. And when that pressure finally loosened, even just a little, something surprising happened. The same opportunities that had felt stuck, heavy, or out of reach suddenly began to move again. Not because I pushed harder, not because I forced anything into place, but because I stopped gripping so tightly. I gave the process room to breathe, and in that space, things could finally unfold. When the nervous system feels pressure, we start communicating lack without even realizing it. It's not something we say out loud. It's something our energy broadcasts. It sounds like, I don't have this yet. I really need this to work. I'm not okay until this happens. And that internal state shapes how we show up in ways we don't always notice. We become a little more tense, a little more controlling, a little more fixated on the result instead of the process. And people, and life itself, tend to respond to that tension by pulling away. Not out of rejection, but because pressure creates a kind of energetic push that makes everything feel just slightly out of reach. It's subtle, but it changes the whole dynamic. Think about something you've wanted deeply. Notice your body as you think about it. Does it feel open or tight? Does it feel curious or urgent? There was another moment in my life when this lesson became unmistakably clear. I was waiting for something to happen, something that felt genuinely important to me. And every day, almost without thinking, I found myself checking, wondering, anticipating, trying to influence the timing, trying to mentally manage the outcome. It was subtle, but it was constant. Eventually, I realized something simple and a little uncomfortable. I wasn't actually living my life. I was hovering over an outcome, circling it in my mind as if that would make it arrive faster. So I made a decision not to stop caring because caring wasn't the issue, but to return to myself. I shifted my attention back to what was real and present, my work, my body, my daily rhythms, the parts of life that were actually happening instead of the thing I was waiting for. And within a surprisingly short time, the situation resolved itself. Not because I manipulated it, or pushed it, or monitored it into existence, but because I stopped interfering with it. I gave it space to unfold on its own timeline, and that made all the difference. One of the deepest truths about human experience is this: life often reflects the state we're living from. If your internal state is pressure, your actions will naturally carry that pressure. In your tone, your timing, your decisions, even your presence. If your internal state is trust, your actions will carry trust. They will feel steadier, clearer, more open. And trust creates space. Space in your mind, space in your body, space in the situation itself. And space is what allows life to move, to shift, to unfold, to meet you in ways that pressure never can. This is why detachment is so powerful. And it's important to say this clearly. Detachment doesn't mean you stop wanting something. It doesn't mean you give up or pretend you don't care, or even lower your standards. Detachment simply means you stop needing the outcome in order to feel stable inside yourself. You stop tying your emotional safety to whether something does or doesn't happen. It's a return to neutrality, not numbness, not indifference, but a steady, grounded state where your nervous system isn't bracing for impact. From that place, you can act with clarity instead of urgency. Your choices become cleaner, your timing becomes more intuitive, and life has more room to meet you halfway. Let me ask you something. Think about something in your life that you've been trying really hard to make happen. Just bring it to mind for a moment. When you feel the effort you're giving it, does that effort feel energized and alive? Or does it feel a little tight, a little tense? If you're comfortable sharing, drop one word in the comments that describes how it feels for you right now. Sometimes simply naming the energy around a goal, without judging it, without trying to fix it, reveals more than we expect. It shows us what state we're actually operating from, and that awareness alone can shift everything. Let's try something simple together. Bring that goal or desire back into your awareness, the one you've been holding on to, maybe a little tightly. Now imagine loosening your grip on the timeline, not abandoning the goal, not pretending you don't care, just releasing the urgency wrapped around it. Give yourself one slow, unhurried breath. Let it move all the way in and all the way out. As you breathe, notice what shifts in your body. Maybe your shoulders drop a little. Maybe your jaw softens. Maybe there's just a tiny bit more space inside. That small, almost imperceptible shift, that's the beginning of detachment. It's the moment your nervous system remembers it doesn't have to chase in order to receive. Trying harder doesn't always move life forward. In fact, there are moments when pushing more actually tightens the whole system, your body, your mind, your energy, to the point where nothing can move at all. But when you release the pressure, when you come back to yourself instead of clinging to the outcome, something shifts. You create the conditions where things can unfold naturally, not through force, not through strain, but through alignment. The quiet, steady place where life can finally meet you. You don't have to chase everything you want. There are times when the most powerful step you can take is actually to step back, to regulate your system, to come home to yourself, and to let life have a chance to respond to you. Because what's truly meant for you rarely demands constant tension. It doesn't require you to grip, strain, or monitor it into existence. Often, it moves more easily when you're steady, when you're open, and when you're no longer trying to force the timing. Detachment isn't about caring less. It's about trusting yourself enough to stop gripping the outcome so tightly. When the grip softens, even just a little, your whole system relaxes. Your perspective widens. Your actions become clearer and more aligned. And in that softer, steadier space, life often moves closer instead of further away. Not because you chased it, but because you finally created room for it to arrive. Wherever you are on your path, remember, you don't have to force clarity or chase purpose. When you ground yourself, life begins to respond. I'll see you next time.